Is February 4th, 2 p.m. And this is the start of the Finance Committee meeting. So, and I think that we'll hand it off to Angie first.
Right. I did up a little kind of an agenda packet, I guess you could call it. If Sarah, if you want to throw it up on the screen for me. There we go. All right. So obviously we haven't had one of these in a little bit. Welcome, Catherine, our newest Finance Committee member.
Thank you.
So I will post all these documents online right after this meeting, as well as the video, so that the public can go out and see. A couple topics today. We have some really good news to talk about, how we ended 2019 and 2020. I know that you saw the December financials come out the other day with a few brief highlights of the end of the biennium. So I'm excited to talk about that. We'll talk about the 2021 and 22 budget, which we're now compiling because we do have the year-end stuff ready to add in there. I'm going to talk about how the sales and hotel motel taxes ended for 2020. And then Sarah Bisson, our grant coordinator, is on the line to give a CARES Act update. I know we've had quite a few questions from the public about, how we spent that money, what we used it for. So we asked her to sit in, and I know that Sarah also posted a summary of all of the invoices and stuff that we got reimbursed for online. So that's good. We will talk about the plan for some quarterly staff reports on the finances, as well as budget amendments. And I wanted to run some ideas by you. And then we also need to discuss the 2021 Finance Committee meeting schedule. It's kind of nice to have it on a set day and time each month, but I know that people have scheduling conflicts, so I kind of wanted to talk about what day and time works best for everybody before formulating that schedule. So with that, I think I'll jump right into the end of the biennium. I am sharing a couple reports that you did see in your December financials. I know I made a comment when I shared the financials that everything was within budget. And how we know that is by looking at this report. That very last column that has % of total is especially important when we look at the expense side, because we're required to have all of our funds within budget authority at the end of each year. So each time I bring those budget amendments to you, I'm trying to make sure that we're going to end the year within those budget numbers. So anything over 100% is bad, and you'll see that we are at 100 or less in every fund. So we were in budget compliance, so that's great news. The next report is where we ended with our fund balances. So again, auditors look to make sure none of our fund balances were in the negative. So clearly here they're all in the positive, which is great. The big item that I know everybody was eagerly awaiting was to see where we ended in the general fund, to see what our next budget's ending fund balance would be. So you'll see in the general fund, we were expecting to end with about 3.1 million in there. But when we went through the budget, we talked about expecting a surplus, and that 3.8 million is the number that is going to get pushed into the next budget that brings our target up over the 2 million mark that we were striving for in the 2021 and 22 budget. Other funds to look at, the utilities ended very well. The hotel motel tax looks great. So hoping that if things continue to go the way they have been going, that we'll have some LTAC funding to award when we get to that time in September. So that's really good news. I know that was kind of hard last year because we had COVID and didn't really know what was going to happen with that. So any questions on year-end budget or fund balances before I jump into the current budget?
So, Andy, just a question
Sure.
I'm looking at these end balances, and you may be talking about this later, but the money that we received for COVID,
Mhm.
is that in the general fund or is that in someplace else as far as our balances go? Because since we spent the money.
It's actually in a handful of funds. We put it back in the funds that the money was expensed out of. So there was the general fund, there was some EMS, there was a convention center. So basically wherever we expensed those COVID funds from is the fund that we put the revenues back in. So I do have a sheet that I could share that shows that, because I had to create fund numbers and bars numbers for them. So for auditing
Thanks.
purposes. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Will, I just have a quick question follow up on what you just said. So will that sheet be part of what's posted then? Or
Yeah.
is there some other way that will be made available?
Nope, I can definitely, I might have to edit it a little bit because I think it just has bars numbers in it right now. But what I'll do is I'll put the fund name and number in there, and then I'll get a copy to Sarah to post with these documents.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So this is the report that shows what council approved as the adopted budget back in December. So again, we were expecting that beginning balance to be about 3.1 million, but we talked about the surplus. So council elected to add some more projects, and actually that ending balance was at about 1.46 after all the adjustments were made. But then when we put the revised actual beginning balance in, the next report will show where we actually ended up. So that's the 2.196 million I was referencing in the email I sent you a few days ago. Does that make sense for everybody?
It does make sense, but if you, on the very first sheet that you had, that is with all the numbers on it, that ending balance is quite a bit higher. Could you explain the difference?
Yes, there's a couple in our internal reports. There's a couple of funds that you'll see on there. The treasurer's clearing is a big one. So those aren't actually in the published budget documentation, but they're in our internal monthly financials. So that's going to be the difference. Good question and great catch.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So if you kind of look at these ending fund balances here, like I was saying, the hotel motel tax was a good one to look at because we're required to keep roughly about 75,000 in that fund balance per our policy. And we actually are now expecting to end the biennium at like 323,000. So that's quite a bit higher than we expected. Convention center's doing well. We cut a lot of expenses over there and it shows. I was pleased to see that number for the ending fund balance. And again, the utilities are doing pretty well as well. That's based on the new connections and just the activity that we've had in the utilities. So that's, and plus I built the new storm rate increase into the budget. So that's in there as well. So I was very pleased with the numbers. They look really, really good. Despite having a rough year in 2020, I think the city did really, really well. And I'm excited to hopefully continue that going forward.
Angie, does that number for hotel motel tax and convention tourism and catering, does that include the COVID funds we received?
Yeah, so the COVID funds were actually received in 2020. So that beginning balance includes those monies.
So that's why it's a lot higher than what we had originally anticipated?
Part of it, yeah, we weren't, but it's also because we cut expenses back so much. We've only had 2 employees over there for quite a while. So it's a couple things. Obviously the revenues kind of went away with the closure, but the COVID funds did help. And we requested the COVID funding for the food program, which helped reimburse for time spent, the convention center staff spent on that program. So along with that and just cutting a lot of expenses, it turned out really good. So happy with that. All right, any other questions on any of these? We are working on publishing the actual budget, so we will get that out to council as soon as it's ready, and I will make sure you all get a copy to replace the old version that is in your budget binders right now. So, all right. So, sales tax. Sales tax, we finished better than ever, which was quite surprising, to be honest. We were a little nervous back in, May and June when we were in the middle of COVID, but then things picked back up and we ended the year on a very good note, up 10%. So very pleased with that. I think it's quite due to people not traveling and coming out here for the day, and online sales and construction has been a big part of it. So very pleased with that number. In the beginning, we just didn't know what this was going to look like, but even the cities around us said the same thing, that they were expecting a huge dip in sales tax, but they were pleased with their numbers as well. So I'm excited we fared well through that. Any questions on?
May I ask, is there a breakdown of, this may be a dumb question, but of specific categories that lump into the sales tax? So this is the umbrella number. Does it go into the different NIACS codes where we could tell if it was hotel or retail or restaurant? Is there anything like that?
We've discussed that amongst the other Grace Harbor County finance directors, and I think one of them had a question into the state to see if there was some kind of summary report we could run. I'm not aware of any at this time, but I know it's something that we were interested in too, to see, because the numbers were coming back so well. We're like, what is causing this? We weren't expecting this. So I can follow up to see if we got any further advice on that from the state and let you know.
I think it would be helpful. My speculation was when we started seeing all these crowds that because people couldn't jump on an airplane and fly somewhere, they said, well, let's go to the beach. And, we'll stay at the campground, or we'll stay in a hotel, or we'll just go down for the day. So we saw a lot of people here. I've never seen it as packed as it was at Damon Parking and Jetty Parking. So I think it would be enlightening.
Well, I think we hit records from July through November, record numbers of people. We've never had that many people before, come across. And part of that time, we were having trouble with our counter, in our car counter, and it wasn't working, so it didn't record all of them. So we had a lot of folks coming. I think too, the other thing that is interesting to look at when it comes out, and I think it comes out in April, and Angie can tell us that, is the B&O tax, because that we see by category, and you can see compared to other years what the hotel RV park folks are making versus restaurants, and I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, that one is our data, so that one's one that I run each year, and we put it in that statistic sheet that the mayor puts out. So that one's really interesting as well.
And Angie, aren't we also seeing the advantage of the new tax collection where if Amazon ships into Ocean Shores, we get the taxes where
Yeah,
before that we didn't?
The online sales is a big one, as well as construction has been really big out here. It's big dollars, and our building permits are still just going crazy. So it's a lot of things contributing to it. It's so happy to continue to see the growth that we have been having, though. It's been really good.
Actually, John asked the question I was going to ask. When did that online tax sales, what month would that have hit our budgets?
It's 2 months delay. So when you look at when COVID started in roughly March,
Yeah.
so May would show March's numbers.
No, for the online sales portion that went in. Was that go through the whole year? Was that 2020 or did that start midway through the year? I can't remember.
We've always had some, but like I said, it's gone up as a result of people staying at home, but it's reflected in these sales tax numbers. So again,
Okay.
The spike would show up 2 months after the purchases.
Well, but however, Angie, there was a law that was passed and the state of Washington started aggressively going after.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm referring to. Right. I just don't know when that hits our budget.
Yeah.
It was with the lawsuit against Wayfair.
Yeah.
And so basically nationally that if you do business someplace, you've got to report the taxes.
Yeah, I think that went into effect last year because I was noticing even my personal like Amazon purchases, shipping them out here, and the sales tax was hitting for Ocean Shores. So that was last year that I noticed that started happening.
The other number that strikes me as really interesting is if you look at January, February, prior to COVID, we were actually doing record numbers then as well in 2020, and by pretty big amounts. So, I mean, you can see obviously where COVID starts to drag us down March, April, May, we could do a comeback, but it's curious. You know, I know we've always had that anticipated projection that, you know, these numbers are higher because people aren't traveling to Hawaii and Mexico and they're not going to other places, so they're staying local, which definitely, you know, obviously that makes logical sense. But if you look at the January, February numbers, we were doing well before. So, you know, we might have had a record year with, you know, had there not been COVID, you might have seen the same record numbers. I mean, the February numbers in particular look really staggering to me. That's just higher than anything we've ever seen. So.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I don't think we had snowy owls or anything like that. You know, we didn't have a particular something that people were coming for.
Yeah. Okay, so we can go on to Hotel Motel. So this one's been quite rough to predict. Yeah, so in May and June, you'll see that we've had our lowest months ever. And that's, you know, the effect of having our hotels closed. And then we had an uptick and we actually ended the year higher than ever. So, and that's what we were trying all year to figure out. And we cut budgets and we ratcheted down the hotel motel budget estimates and didn't award any LTAC funding. Because when we were looking at May and June, it was getting pretty scary. But pleased to report by the end of the year, we came back up and we're up 2% compared to last year. So this is contributing to that fund balance that we looked at earlier. And again, if things keep going the way they're going, we should have funds available to give out some LTAC awards this year, which would be wonderful to get back into some norm there. Any questions on hotel motel tax?
Are basically all of our hotels pretty much caught up?
Yes.
There's nothing that we're waiting. Okay.
Yes, they are.
And
That
are
probably
they
sounds-
operating at 100% occupancy, or are they operating at a different occupancy? Do we know that?
I not.
Each one is different. Most of
Okay.
them are full, but I know like the Canterbury does some different cleaning, so they're not at 100. I think Best Western is also, but I know quite a few of them are running at 100%. Shiloh and quite a few of them are.
So,
And I think we
so
have to
they can
conclude,
charge higher prices
Yep.
possibly as part of it too,
Yep.
demand.
and it includes Sweetgrass having been closed all year.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm sure that helped some of the other hotels
Yeah.
uh,
And the
to have
the-
a little more.
yeah, the vacation rentals too were, most of them were way up over last year because they were full all the time instead of just on the weekends.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of vacation rentals, I wanted to point out that our business license service through Department of Revenue is online. It went live January 21st. And since the 21st through today, we've had 25 new applications. So it's taken off very well. We're very busy with it because we have to facilitate all the approvals and inspections on those. But I think, you know, people are excited because it's just way easier already in there.
Is that 25 new or just 25 that are either reapplying or
They're new.
that? Wow.
Yeah.
But what I haven't figured out from that new is, were they doing this prior and just the new licensing process made it easy?
Yeah.
We just don't know the answer to that, but I think Kurt has 17 applications for fire inspections that are sitting that he has to do
Yeah.
next week. And so it's kind of just a really interesting question. I mean, are these people that are just taking advantage of, you know, the new, how easy the Department of Licensing makes it to get a license now, and so they're applying? Or are these people that have been doing it for a little while and just never bothered to do it right? We don't
Yeah.
have the full scope of it yet.
Do we know what kind of businesses they are? Is there any way of determining whether they're like home-based, whether
They're all over the place. Some of them
Yeah.
are home occupation, some of them are overnight rentals, some are like construction businesses. So it's just all over. There's no real theme. But Department of Revenue did say to expect this because every city that they've onboarded sees an uptick in their applications because it is easier for the businesses. They already like go through Department of Revenue for all their taxes, and they have other city endorsements. So it's basically just clicking a button to get a City of Ocean Shores addendum or endorsement. It's just really easy. So they said it's been a lot for us too. So
we could sort of speculate that some of the businesses that are new applications realized, well, I'm doing business in Ocean Shores and I have been, but I never really thought I needed to get a license here because I'm based in, I don't know,
exactly.
Aberdeen or Hoquiam or
Right.
something, but now I'm
Yes.
finding out I absolutely have to have a license to do
Yep.
business in this town. So they could have been doing business here before,
Yeah,
but just not had a license. Is that an,
it's true. Yeah.
okay,
Businesses change ownership. They're supposed to go in and get a new license. So we have a lot of that out here too, just ownership changes. But yeah, it's been very exciting. It's been a lot. We're just trying to keep up with it right now. So the customers seem to be, the minute I say, oh, we're online with Department of Revenue, they're like, okay, I know how to go online and do that. So it's been nice.
lots
Does that
easier.
make it likely that we will see more sales tax? Because sometimes perhaps if they didn't have a license here, they weren't reporting it here.
B&O, yeah, and sales. Yeah. Mhm.
And I would just want to say, as the city administrator, really briefly for the council members that are on the call, Angie has been doing 3 jobs in terms of trying to help with our licensing. So our licensing person has been out, she's been doing budgeting. And I just want to, you should all know how hard she's working to get all of this done. It needs to be expressed.
So
Been doing payroll.
She's been doing payroll, she's been doing business licensing, she's been doing, so she's been pushed about as far as we can push her.
So then business licensing now, that's off your plate? mostly now because they go through revenue?
No, I have to facilitate, I have to log into Department of Revenue's site every day and assign tasks to people because we have 4 people that sign off on each business license. So I monitor that and make sure those are going through the review process. And then at the end, I'm the one that has to approve them and send them back to Department of Revenue. So, and then we have to
Superwoman.
create an account for their B&O quarterlies because that's still being done by the city. So it's still work. All right, I think we should probably switch it over to Sarah for a CARES Act update.
Hello, how are you, Finance Committee?
I,
I am here to give you an update about the Department of Commerce Coronavirus Relief Funds, which was appropriated underneath the CARES Act. I don't know, let me see here. Sarah, do you happen to have the summary or would you like to share my screen?
I can share it. Just give me 1 sec.
Thank you. Okay. What you will see, oh, just one moment. I'm sorry, I had a little bit of an outburst from my dogs. They just seem to know when I get ready to get on a call. I don't know how that happens. Anyway, we have an award amount of $292,050. As you can see here, the community meal total came to $89,052.55. I'm just going to go right down the line here. For telecommunication costs, this included a Zoom subscription, some laptops, and things to make it capable for our employees to work remotely. We spent almost $15,000. It was $14,933.15. Our unemployment costs for Q1 and Q2 equaled $15,171.20. The centralized receptionist due to those telecommunications and whatnot during the stay-at-home order was $8,649.29. And sick pay for those affected by COVID-19 was $77,038.20. We were able to entirely pay we were able to entirely expense out the grant, and I feel like I'm missing the first response. So please pardon me while I unhide these, because this is an itemization of all. This is an itemization of all. Oh, here we go. My apologies. So these sections here are still. We still need to go over. We had sanitation and social distancing supplies that included all hand sanitizer, masks for city employees and committees in the amount of $12,264.65. We were able to purchase 3 ventilators for $33,815.82. And the legal guidance provided to us from our attorney in order to put in those proclamations and whatnot, we have $11,854. We also use this fund to pay for the porta potties for the influx of tourism when they opened our county up and everyone started flocking here to the beach. for $6,947.56. And our first responder wages, this is actually something that came out from the U.S. Department of Treasury. They said that we could support any overtime costs for our first responders that were due to the influx of tourism or the effects of COVID. And then they came back and said you could include all first responder wages for EMS and PD since January 20th. And we were able to expend the remaining balance of the grant award by providing first response, some reimbursement for first response. So let me see if I can show that to you here. So the only overtime the police department and the fire department claimed was for Labor Day weekend because of that influx. But we were able to go back and give them close to $8,000 a piece and reimburse their budgets for wages since January 1st, 2020. That's a synopsis, a brief explanation of what we spent from our coronavirus relief funds from the Department of Commerce. Again, you can see all $292,000 and $50 was expended. This has been put online, I believe. We had a public request for all of this information. So these, when you unhide this, shows everything that was claimed for reimbursement. Is there any questions surrounding that summary?
I have a couple, if I may.
Sure.
The sick pay $77,000. Is that for when somebody might have had to be out because they were exposed to COVID on an emergency call, or had to be in quarantine? Or when you say those affected by COVID, can you say more about how they were affected by COVID? Seems like
Catherine, that's really something I should probably answer.
okay.
We had the Family First, where we were instructed to make 2 weeks or 80 hours of sick leave available for COVID specifically. And it was in addition to sick leave that we already give people. So that was available to people throughout much of the year. So within that, we had a few people who had the virus. Unfortunately, a couple of them came to work before they knew they had it. So the people who worked around them had to go out. And our understanding was that from the time you are exposed, you may, show the virus in a test within a few days, but generally you should wait about 10 days. Right. So that meant that if somebody was exposed, they had to be out. And then people were exposed all over the place. If they, a neighbor came down with it or something like that, and they were exposed. So we had all of those things. We also, the governor put in place his out-of-state travel order, that if you traveled out of state, when you came back, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks. And we honored that order. So anybody who traveled had to also be out for 2 weeks. So there were just a variety of situations, not very many of them where somebody was actually sick, but it was really an abundance of caution, because if it came in, we could be like the prison and it would just go through our population like mad. So we were extra cautious on that, and we felt that that was the right thing to do. So that was my decision, and I take either the credit or the blame for it.
Sure. I just wondered, it seemed like a lot, and I kind of thought that's probably what it was, but yeah, I wasn't sure. And then the 22,000 wages for public safety. Was that not for just, was it because they said, okay, we'll pay for anything?
It
for,
was at the very
wages?
end.
Yeah.
It was at the very end. We were thinking at that point, you know, trying to figure how much we had left and how we were going to use that. And they came back and said, you can use it this way. And that was a very short notice sort of thing. And so we did. We really didn't have time to do anything else. Like, you know, if we were ordering equipment, like I was talking to the mayor of Aberdeen the other day, and he said that one of the things that they did with some of their CARES money was to take their water offices, which were one big office, and they felt, you know, people could expose one another easily in there. And they redid the inside of it and spent quite a bit of money making separate rooms out of it so that the people were not sort of breathing the same air. And so there's a variety of things. We didn't really do anything like that, but we did use what we could to make sure, because we really had no idea where the city was going to end up.
Right.
And I was very concerned that we were going to be in financial difficulties. And honestly, I don't feel a lot different right now. Even with the extra money that we have in the budget, it seems to me that with the sort of permutations of the virus that are going on out there, we have no idea where that's going and how long we're going to have virus and all of the different types of virus with us. So I had thought, or I had hoped, that we would be able to start spending some of that money mid-year this year, but I think we'd be smarter to hang on to it for a while.
Yeah, so with regards then to the about $16,000 in wages, if it hadn't been for that directive, that would have come out of the general fund. Well, at least the police department, 8,000 would have been out of the general fund, and the other would have been out of, I assume, EMS. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, so police and fire wages would have come out of the general fund, and then EMS would have been EMS fund. Yeah.
And then even the overtime would have, but we presume we had a lot more people here because they couldn't go anywhere else. Couldn't
Correct.
get on that airplane. Okay, thank you.
Sarah, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the approval process on these. I know that you were like in direct connection with the granting agency before we did just about anything on this. So could you kind of talk a little bit about how that worked and that you had to run everything through them before we even really did anything?
Yes, excuse me. So I work directly with our grant liaison, Angela Hong from the Department of Commerce, and they were in direct contact with the U.S. Department of Treasury. So before we purchased ventilators, before we applied overtime, when we had questionable, because we were provided with the guidance and I'm pretty good at interpreting those, but if there was anything in question, I was able to reach out to Angela Hong at Department of Commerce, and she was able to guide us through the process and let us know whether it was an allowable cost or not. So the good thing is that all of these items listed have been approved and were eligible costs per the U.S. Department of Treasury. So for example, we knew that the overtime was allowable because there was an influx of tourism due to our county being more open than anybody else. And we could show the direct correlation for the overtime and that increase in tourism. And afterwards is when the Department of Treasury came back and said that they conducted a study and, you know, they understood that in order to enforce all of the regulations that had been put into place and the additional costs to EMS, fire department, any first responders, that we could use those wages for that purpose. And, you know, it's kind of a balancing act when you get this amount of money and you don't know what's going to go on. You know, you really have to think, okay, so we need to set aside so much money for sanitation and social distancing and maybe so much money for telecommunications. But when you get towards the end, you realize you have perhaps a little bit of a balance left over. So that's how we came with the additional $16,000 for PD, and that was approved through the U.S. Department of Treasury prior to us even considering that. All of this, again, has been reimbursed and approved through the state of Washington and the Department of U.S. Treasury. Does that cover your question, Andy?
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any additional questions in regard to this information?
This will be posted with the other documents on the Finance Committee page, is that right?
I actually already have this posted under
Uh-huh.
COVID-19 updates, and there's a section for the grants for the CARES Act that these are already up on.
So you could just put a link there in case somebody's looking at this Finance Committee meeting and wants to see that document.
Yep.
Thanks.
Right. So I think we're on to the next topic, which is quarterly staff reports and budget amendments.
Thank you, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Sarah. As always, thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
So I know we do monthly Finance Committee meetings that are recorded and posted. John gives an update at the council meetings on Finance Committee, which kind of keeps, you know, in the know on what's going on with our budget and where we're at. I'm going to be asking to be on the agenda quarterly to kind of give a finance update. And then in conjunction with that, I think it's best that we start doing quarterly budget amendments as well, just to keep current on those. And it makes sense if I'm going to be doing a quarterly update, that would be the time where we talk about any needs to adjust anything. And then I'll bring those forward as well. And Sarah actually had a great idea. She asked if I would like to have her start tracking the budget amendments on her end as well, as the city clerk. So she created a spreadsheet, which she's probably trying to pull up right now. And I wanted to get your feedback on what you feel is important to have in this, because she's going to keep track of every budget amendment that goes through council with the date, the topic, the amount, the BARS code, what it's for. And also, I know a thing in the past has been council's approval of it. So this is what she's compiled so far. I did get the question of, do we want to have individual council members' names in there on how they vote on it?
No.
I'm just throwing this out there to the group to ask what is useful for you, because this is a tool for council, and we're going to bring this quarterly to kind of show where we're at along with any budget amendments. And I just wanted your ideas on what's useful for you to see on here.
Yeah, I think this is a great document and would help hugely. I don't think we need to put individual names on it. We kind of know where it was. And as long as the council meeting date is on there, we can always go back if we have questions to look at it ourselves and stuff. So from my perspective, this would be huge. So great job, Sarah and Angie.
Any other thoughts, Catherine?
I agree. I kind of do this on my own, so I'm kind of happy to see this here. One of the things that would be nice, and I don't know if it would be that difficult, is with regards to, for example, the fingerprint request that we approved last meeting.
Right.
Could there be another column that said like disposition or arrival or whatever. So like this was completed in, April of, or received in April of 2021. I'm just thinking that that would sort of close the loop. And I think that would be helpful to sort of think about how we're tracking, and particularly as a performance measure.
Like a completion date column, maybe?
Yeah. Like when, I think I asked the question, when did Nikki expect to receive that fingerprinting machine? And she said, well, usually it's somewhere around 3, as I recall, she said 3 or 4 months. So it'd probably be somewhere in March or April. And I just think it would be nice. I've always wondered, for example, when we got the ambulance, those
Yeah.
lift carts for the ambulance, I assume we did, but we kind of never heard. We approved it, and it was
Yep.
last year. But it'd be nice for that to close the loop.
Yeah,
I
for
like
sure.
it. Great.
All right. John, do you have any thoughts?
I think it's great. The only thing I might add is the fund number.
Okay, the name maybe, name and number?
Right, because I know the bars, but most people don't know what the bars are.
Okay, so we could do a fund name and number column.
Instead of the bars code even, maybe.
Okay,
What do you think about that,
well,
John? Folks?
Yeah, no,
I'm-
I think it's fine. I'm just thinking of when we pass something, always the question is what fund is it coming out of?
Right.
And if
Yeah.
we just make it just consistent, so it's the same, we're talking the same language.
Yep.
Right.
Good idea.
yeah, I know we've had a citizen ask where in the budget some of these items are. So that's kind of where the bars code came from. But I think the fund name and number would be more helpful.
But I think it's great. I think, especially if we're going to do this on a quarterly basis in there, it's so much easier for us to just take a look. Oh yeah, I remember we voted for that.
Yep.
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 Okay. All right, anything to add, Sarah? This was your idea.
No, ma'am. I just thought it'd be nice to slip in when you do the budget amendments because it was useful for me too.
Mhm.
So I do have another question as I'm looking at this. It says amount budgeted. Should that say amount expended once it's complete? Amount spent rather, because
Yeah,
I guess amount budget is it wasn't originally in the 2021, 2022.
Exactly.
budget or whichever.
Yeah.
But it might be nice to know how much actually did that cost.
we could add that maybe after the completion date, just so
Yeah.
show final total expense or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that kind of goes hand in hand with closing it out as well. Very good. I like.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on?
The only comment I have is I think we have now agreed to touch this maybe a total of 4 or 5 times. And it's one little piece of what we do. And that's a lot of, adding something more and coming back to the document. It really wasn't intended to be a delivery sort of thing. And this is, in fact, a tiny portion of the sorts of things that we do order. So I kind of question the usefulness of some of this. If you guys want to try it for a while, that's fine with me, but I don't want us to get too bogged down in, too much detail on everything we do. It just takes more time and effort, and we have less time to spend on the big picture.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good starting document, but we don't want it, as we're going through council, just keep adding to it, adding to it, and it becomes, this is just at a glance again, I think, and that's a great thing. It helps to bring back what we did and when we did it. But if we keep adding too much, I think it's fine where it's at, but we don't want to keep adding to it.
Well, we will try it out and see how it works.
Very helpful. Thanks.
Okay, I think the last thing I have is the upcoming Finance Committee schedule. I know, Eric, you have a lot of conflicts, so I wanted to ask, I typically like to hold the Finance Committee meeting before the second meeting of the month. So John can give his update, and that way we have all of the monthly numbers typically. So is there a day that works better? I know Fridays were a problem, so I started doing them on Fridays.
Tuesdays and Thursdays work best for me. Thursday's pretty fine.
Okay. Does
But
this
Monday-
time work? 2 o'clock?
Sure.
Okay. Catherine, you good?
Yeah, I'm pretty open on most any day, except Monday.
Okay.
I get ready for council then.
Oh, yeah, I know. All right, so I'll make up a schedule and I'll do the Thursday before the second council meeting at 2, and we'll get it on people's calendars.
Cool. That'll work.
Actually, Thursday would be a problem for me because I got a conflict with Greater Grace Harbor in that afternoon.
Okay.
Is there any way we can do Tuesday?
Do what? Or morning's fine too. Earlier is fine too.
Either one, Tuesday or Thursday morning, I'm very flexible.
What works for you, Angie?
Usually I try to get it out as further as I can because the hotel motel tax stuff comes in like around the 22nd. But I'll just do my best with the numbers and get you what I have at any given time. So if we want to do Tuesdays, there's just kind of the risk that we won't have the up-to-date numbers, but
But
Is Thursday mornings an option? Because Tuesdays while we're on this Zoom platform are pretty intense.
Oh, those are your planning committee and a bunch of other stuff, isn't it? And radio board.
I could do Thursday mornings.
10 o'clock or something. It's fine. 9, 10. I'm good either one.
How about 10? Would that give you enough time, Angie?
yeah,
11 would work for me too.
Thursdays at 10. That works for me.
Cool.
Perfect.
All right.
Works
I
for
will
me.
schedule- So I think I'm done. Mayor, do you have any topics you want to cover?
I really don't. I'm really pleased with how the year came out. I hoped when we started seeing increased numbers that we'd see increased money, but because of the delays, we just had really no idea until now. So I'm really pleased to see it, and I appreciate all the effort that goes into trying to figure these things out. It's a really tough go. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Scott, you have anything?
No, nothing. I mean, they're all things that can be addressed, but they're nothing pressing at the moment.
All right. Any other topics?
I just like to say thanks for including me in this, and I'm really happy about how this is looking. I was, as you all know, I was pretty concerned very early on. So this is a good thing. Thank you.
And I think honestly, one of the things when the time comes, you might consider continuing to do these meetings via Zoom so that they can be recorded and
Yeah.
people can look at them. I think it's a good thing.
Mhm.
I think a combination, yeah, absolutely, yeah, of any of our meetings. I'd love to see us do Zoom even when we're meeting in person as a council. It just opens up more access to more citizens.
Mhm.
Been a good
Yeah,
thing.
I don't know how that would work, but Sarah's getting awfully good at Zoom, so.
Yes, she is.
Sick of Zoom. I've had enough.
The other day I said, I think the new word in the lexicon though is you're on mute.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zoom has made my life a whole lot busier, not slower.
Oh, yeah.
It
Me
has,
too.
yeah. Lots more meetings, but lots less driving.
Yes, I like that too. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Good job.
We'll talk
Thanks,
on
everyone.
Monday.
Yep.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
All right.
Bye.